Do you want to make $100 an hour? That is the standard rate for Peakwalker, a cleaning business that's so popular they regularly have to turn away their customers. So stick around and find out how exactly the business got to this point. On this episode, we'll be featuring Josh Raff, who is the owner of Peakwalker Roof, Gutter, and Window Cleaning. He is an avid rock climber, and this experience paved the way into starting this business. Also, he has worked in large cleaning businesses and noticed they didn't prioritize customer service, in which he decided to change that by starting his company. Where does your expenses go the most, you would say?
This year, starting out, it's gonna look like breaking over 100 grand. I've been increasing my prices because I have so much work coming in.
Today, we're gonna catch Josh in action. Peakwalker has grown so quickly that Josh has stopped paying for advertising and still receives more job requests than what he can handle. And that is a great problem to have as a business owner. Can you show me your current setup for your cleaning business?
So I spent some time getting this truck nice and built out.
So by the end of this interview, you will understand first on how to start a cleaning business company. Secondly, how to build a reputation that will bring the customers back. And lastly, what Josh will do to take his business to the next level. Hey everybody, this is Max Popshinsky. I'm the new host and I'm very excited to join the UpFlip team. So let's get into the interview.
Hey.
Hello Josh, nice to meet you, brother.
Max, good to meet you.
So with the first question, Josh, tell me about yourself as the owner of the Peakwalker cleaning business, and how did you transition from working for a company to now working for yourself?
I was kind of halfway forced into it by finding out I was more or less unemployable. And I thought I had kind of come across a lucky break when I got hired to be a lead technician for a company doing this work, setting up here. They were from out of state and they wanted to get developed in Oregon. And there's just like a lot of haphazard procedures within the company. And I had just gotten back from California. I got my skydiving license. So after exercising that kind of like competency for like a week straight,
yes,
I just realized I could probably do this better on my own than these pile of idiots. So I ended up taking out the expenses for the initial startup, and here we are.
Awesome. How do you decide on the price estimates? And also, do you charge hourly or is it a flat rate? How does that work?
It's a flat rate. The estimates are based off of mostly square footage to begin with.
Okay.
And then roof type, window type, the pitch of the roof, how difficult it's going to be to set up a rigging system to work safely on it. There are other little variables, like for example, this roof here has a porch roof on the front and the back.
Yeah.
So in that situation, that expands the actual square footage of roof that's going to have to be addressed. There are other things like balconies. If the neighbors are super close and I end up having to clean their properties off from any overspray. In this case, the neighbors are a good distance away. So this is a good scenario. But yeah, it comes down to square footage, roof type, and the pitch of the roof mostly.
I'm guessing that equipment is an important part of this business.
Yes.
And so when you buy equipment, do you mostly buy used or do you buy new equipment? How does that work?
Well, there's some things that I probably just wouldn't want to buy used.
Okay.
The harness, for example, that's kind of something I want to know who's had it before, what it's been exposed to, make sure it's not been used in ways it shouldn't have been that might compromise its ability to, do the fall protection that it's supposed to. It all really just depends on how much of a headache you want to deal with. If you want to buy a used pressure washer, it's just like, anytime you buy a used engine, you don't know, did this person really keep up with the oil changes? Did they do something to it that really is hard on it? And I personally bought most everything new except for the truck, obviously.
Okay.
The way I sort of reasoned around that was I could spend a little bit more upfront for something new and probably make it back, in a matter of months. Or I could go on the cheap and buy something used and then end up at a job where it breaks on me. And now not only do I have to buy something new, but also this job I'm losing money on because it wasn't bid for me to go run and grab a new pressure washer or something like that. So
So when it came to advertising, what would you say was the best method to attract new customers and new clients?
The pay-per-click ad services made the most sense to me. When I first started, I looked at everything, and I created an account with everybody. I won't name names, but there's a lot of these services out there that offer you means to make a business profile, and then you'll get referrals through them. And basically, the way it worked out was you pay several $100s a month for a minimum of 6 months. And they have no guarantee or even way to show you the metrics as to whether or not you're reaching anybody. On top of that, you had to offer a discount for your services to advertise to their customers. Now, you compare that to the service providers that offered pay-per-click ads. I can set a budget. I can see exactly how many people were looking at the ad versus how many people clicked it. And once I hit my budget, then no more money is going to be spent. Meaning that it's really easy to gauge how effective it is. And also it's very safe for spending the money. But when just starting out, it just made no sense to me to pay a subscription fee to a service that doesn't have any transparency as to whether or not the money you've given them is leading to you making money.
Okay, Josh, so I see a rope coming down from the roof. I see your truck. What exactly is going on here?
Whenever a roof is too steep that you can't stand up on it, you should be roped up. But regardless, OSHA law requires that you be roped up for any time you're working on a roof. So you got to set up some sort of rigging fall protection. I have techniques that are adopted from, tree work and a bit of rock climbing that allow me to do ground-based anchor systems. Like, for example, to my truck here, I have ways to set up fall protection that if I were to fall off a roof, I wouldn't hit the ground. And I have a shock absorbing lanyard, and that'll prevent the static line, putting all the shock into my spine.
Yes.
So what I'm doing now is just rigging that to work this roof safely.
So Josh, what's your annual income per year, you would say?
This year, starting out, it's going to look like breaking over 100 grand.
100 grand.
Yeah.
And so what would you say, for example?
Over 100 grand.
Over 100 grand. Okay. So someone just starting this cleaning business company, would you say, is it possible the same here to achieve this annual income? Or does it take time, is it possible?
I don't know. I moved here from Kentucky, and I don't think you're making this kind of money on that side of the country. The minimum wage is higher over here in the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of fields that pay better out here. So, if you're in this area along the I-5 corridor where rain's an issue, maybe you can. But I don't think I could charge what I charge for these services the same back home.
Hey everyone, sorry for interrupting, but if you decided that cleaning business is not for you, it's okay, it's not for everyone. But if you're interested in starting a business and need a business loan, you're in the right place, as you could check out upflip.com/business loans, which you'll be able to receive the best loan offers. And secondly, checking the rates will not affect your credit score. So let's get back into the interview. So Josh, when it comes to the cleaning business, what would you say, where does your expenses go the most, you would say?
Pretty much just gas and moss treatment right now.
Gas and moss treatment,
I'm not paying anything for advertising.
Yes.
And as far as the equipment I use on a daily basis, ropes will wear out, prussics will wear out. Those need to be replaced, depending on use, once a year, every 6 months. Regular monthly expenses is just gas and the moss treatment,
So how much would you just say right now, being as a one-man team, how much does it cost you a month on these expenses?
I don't know. I could break open QuickBooks right now and take a look at this
like
month,
an estimate, if you had to throw a number right now.
Yeah, I guess with the brushes that I use to remove the moss, those wear down. And so it seems about every month I spend anywhere from, $300 to $500.
Oh, $500? Oh, yeah. It's not that bad.
It's not a lot of overhead.
Wow. So Josh, can you show me your current setup for your cleaning business?
Sure. I got 4 ladders, various sizes that I found get you about anywhere you need to get on residential. They're all accessorized with leg levelers, stabilizer bars. That's important so that, you have the safest setup that doesn't do any damage to the property. I think altogether those added up with the accessories, somewhere around like $600.
$600.
Yeah. You can see that organization is pretty important to me. So I spent some time getting this truck nice and built out so that everything stays where I put it last, and it's easy to access, and I don't have to go rifling through things. Yeah, pressure washer here. One of the things that saved me an immense amount of time is before I was wheeling this thing out on board ramps, but now I've got it set in here with a hose reel.
Oh, nice.
This thing was well worth it. It was kind of a pain to mount inside there.
How much did it cost this?
The reel was somewhere in the range of like 150 to 200.
Okay, 150.
I shopped around for the right one. I'm kind of like an uber dork when it comes to reading reviews and stuff and making sure I'm not spending money on a subpar product. But this was so worth it because, you know, this holds 200 feet of hose. I really only use the pressure washer for distributing treatment using the soap nozzle on the roofs and cleaning up after, like, for example, you know, if I splatter anything on the gutters or the soffit of the eaves on a property like this, then I'm not guaranteed that the hose pressure from the regular house tap is even going to reach there. Yeah. So I've got a nozzle that will shoot a stream, you know, up to 40 feet, and it just makes it makes cleanup a breeze, and I don't have to go through the hassle of wheeling that thing out to the ground. I can just park the truck close enough that I hook up a garden hose, and then the hose reel allows me to just pull, spray, wrap it back up, and I'm out of there.
Do you mostly do commercial or is it residential? And which service do you think is the best for this cleaning business?
Yeah, residential for sure. Okay. It's easier to adjust the profit margin, or I should say it's easier to constrain it, meaning that if a job is under bid, then you'll probably make it back in the next one.
Okay.
And you won't be stuck there for days. Whereas if you do a commercial property that's like, you know, 6,000 square feet, and you don't really nail that bid, you'll feel the pain a lot more. Yes. And I took a couple like warehouse jobs and stuff, and it's just kind of hard to gauge exactly what the scope of the work is going to be. There was one where I was just running football field lengths along this roof with a blower, just getting all the leaf debris off of it. And, you know, I made a good price on it or whatever, but it's just a lot easier to gauge the how long a job is going to take and what the profit margin is going to be when you're doing just homes.
Okay, Josh, so you have no employees yet, right?
No employees at this time, no.
But you're planning on expanding the business, right, to employees and later on in the future?
Yeah, it seems kind of like an inevitability because I'm getting to the point where I spend so much time having to respond to quote requests that I don't have the space in the schedule to fill. It's kind of like I'm handicapping my own company in a way right now just because I don't have the infrastructure and the employees to take it all on. Because here's the thing, when things go right, that's not always the blessing that you thought it was going to be. Like in my situation where I didn't expect to have as much work coming my way as I did. And then it's very easy to burn out. So you add one other person onto that and things go right. Well, now you probably need to have an office personnel to handle the double the workload of scheduling and stuff like that. And it's going to be like one of those little, you know, those little marble machines. You send a marble down and it all just starts happening. That's what I want it to be because I came really close to burnout during this COVID season with all the work that came through. And it really taught me a valuable lesson about knowing how to regulate how much you work. I didn't realize this, but when you own the company, you can work in ways where you don't consider yourself as working, you know? You can be sitting there responding to emails at 8 p.m. because they came in because you didn't put the discipline in place to say, I'm only going to respond to emails from this hour of the day to this hour of the day.
So Josh, what would you say, what are some ideas you would offer to those who are watching, who are planning on starting a cleaning business?
I would probably work for somebody else first. And make your mistakes, you know, learn from doing without it being your reputation and your money on the line. Not to say that I think, you know, you should do a bad job working for someone else, but I think you should really get some experience under your belt and know what you're doing before you go and present yourself as a one-man show. So even if you haven't done this work per se, having experience, you know, with ropes and ladders and hand tools is probably a good thing to get before you just jump into something on your own. There's a lot of this that doesn't necessarily take specialized training, but there's a cumulative knowledge you get that's only gleaned from being on the job.
Yes.
And that becomes really valuable specific knowledge.
So basically, first to get comfortable with all the things before you move on, to kind of build a foundation before moving on type of thing.
Yeah. And, you know, be humble and willing to learn for a period before you try and go and play the expert in the field. So underneath, this has the setup for my deionized water cleaning system. So this right here, this brush head, that's boar's hair. Did you ever think boar's hair is what's best for cleaning windows?
Never would have guessed.
Yeah, it was a surprise to me too.
Nice.
Italians. So this thing right here, it feeds water through this 1/4-inch hose that I run through a filter that has a resin. So you run the hose tap through that, and the water that comes out the other side, which you can test this with a parts per million meter, it has no mineral content in it at that point. I'm assuming it's usually calcium deposits that leave the sort of white milkiness that's on your shower. All that gets bound up to the ionic resin. And then this right here, this is the carbon fiber extension pole, and it can extend to something like 35 feet.
This one right here, 35 feet.
Yeah, so what this does is in certain situations, when you have windows that clean up pretty easily, you can run the water through that hose attached to this pole, connected to the brush. And whereas you would have to set up a ladder, you know, to get some of these windows up here, now you can just get it from the ground. The brush is rinsing the whole time that you're using the abrasive qualities of the bristles, and then you rinse off the window.
So, Josh, when it comes to hiring, what exact characteristic are you looking for?
Hiring people, you know, it's interesting because on one hand, I'm looking for someone that has some degree of creativity, because problem solving is probably the most important aspect of finding a good employee. Not every house is the same. After doing this job long enough, it can kind of feel like Groundhog Day, but you'll come across properties more often than not that have little strange quirks about them that require an adjustment and the usual methods that are used. So I don't necessarily want to hire somebody like me. I want to hire somebody that they enjoy the improvisation that is required job to job, but they don't necessarily want to take in the full scope of the business, you know, the advertising side of things, or the scheduling, or the communicating with customers and explain the services. They just kind of want to do the work, but at the same time, they can't be someone who is so bound by formula and procedure that they're helpless to work on their own on certain jobs.
So most of your customers are recurring customers, right? Are they mostly just new customers, or are they mostly the same ones just coming back to kind of touch up, maintain?
Right now, most of the customers are new customers.
New customers,
I'm building up the recurring customers slowly. I don't like to sell people on stuff they don't need. And a lot of them are condensed to the busiest seasons too. So a lot of the work I take in is still new customers. And I've been increasing my prices because I have so much work coming in that is one way of filtering out what jobs I take. So there might be a little bit of a restructuring where if the new baseline for prices, if the people signed up for the recurring services don't meet that margin anymore, and they're not willing to pay the higher rate, then maybe some of those will get dropped off and new ones will come in, but we'll see.
So like, I'm really curious on how big do you want your team to be? Like, is there a number? Like, how do you plan on building this team? And like, what specific number, what areas, like, how would that look like?
Man, max. Some days my mind is like, franchise, go down the entire I-5 corridor, go huge, man. Be trying to span out nationally. And then another part of me is thinking, you know, part of the problem with labor-based business is incentive. How do you get somebody to want to stick with it for the long haul? Or how do you be honest about people's situation? How many people, you know, when they were in elementary school said, I want to clean windows and gutters? You know, people end up where they end up in our society, not always because they wanted to be there. So part of me thinks that to live with myself as a boss, I have to acknowledge the reality of why people are working for me.
Okay.
And if it's a means to an end that could be something better than what they're currently doing, as a leader, I want to put protocols in place to get them thinking about that. Hey, how long do you want to be here?
Okay.
Where would you like to end up at the end of this? Have you ever thought about that? No. Okay, let's think about it. Did you come up with something? Okay, can we put together a plan for how to get there? Or, hey, I like working outdoors. I like working with my body. This is it for me. But, you know, by the time I'm 50, I'm not going to be able to go as fast as I was when I was 20. So how can I set up a system where they can take on additional leadership responsibilities and maybe not necessarily be working at the revenue-based hustle they were before? Maybe if they're willing to relocate, they can be a decentralized command over a separate area far from where the company was started. That's all the sort of stuff that you can be idealistic and you can strategize all day, but the reality is a logistical problem that you can only learn from experience.
Of course. So coming to the end, the one thing that stood out speaking with Josh is that safety always comes number one. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you all next time.